"Sorry, ma'am. This section's for VIPs only." The words cut sharp, like a blade through the chatter. Two security guards in crisp black suits stood in her way, arms crossed, their cold stares radiating authority. Their voices stayed low, but carried just enough to draw eyes. The crowd murmured, gazes flicking over her faded work jacket. Blue, patched at the shoulders, paired with scuffed steel-toe boots. No evening gown, no silk scarf. Nothing like what the other parents wore to the town's scholarship awards ceremony. Ellen Hayes didn't blink. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't push back. She just looked past them to the stage, eyes scanning the rows of chairs for her son, Ethan, 18, tall, bronze-skinned, exceptional. His name was bolded in the program, the top scholarship winner. He'd earned it, and she'd earned her right to see it. But as the guards motioned again, a polite gesture hiding a deeper intent, Ellen rose slowly, not because she accepted their judgment, but because she knew how this town played its game. Not her seat. Not her crowd, not her rules. If you've ever been shoved aside, not for what you've done, but for who you are or who they think you are, you know this moment. You've lived it. If you haven't, stick around. In a few minutes, this stage, this crowd, and these very guards will freeze in awe. Ellen didn't need saving, but someone was about to get a wake-up call. Ellen's name was taped to a folding chair in the 5th row, marked neatly, Hayes. She arrived early at the town square, settling under a white tent set for donor galas. In her faded utility jacket, patched with haze on the chest, and worn boots, she sat straight, hands folded, eyes on the stage where her son, Ethan, would receive his scholarship. Margaret Langley glided in, turquoise shawl fluttering, heels clicking, whispering to a friend, "I thought they'd keep the photo area clear of riffraff." Her words carried, sharp enough for nearby rows to hear. Ellen stayed calm, but the crowd's murmurs shifted, eyes flicking to her patched jacket. Security approached soon after. "Ma'am, we need you to step aside for last-minute changes," one guard said, voice neutral. Ellen looked up, steady. "This seat's got my name on it," she said, soft but firm. "My son's getting the scholarship." "Just a temporary shift," the guard replied. "You'll still have a good view." Ellen's fingers tightened on the program. She stood, not arguing. She knew the town's rules. Gathering her program and pride, she followed them, boots steady, as they led her back 1 row, then 2, then to the 10th, under a faded banner. "Congrats to our rising stars, 2025. No one sat beside her. The air carried pricey perfume, none hers. Parents chatted about vacations, but Ellen's eyes stayed locked on Ethan, tall and composed on stage, his suit pressed, unaware of her displacement. She didn't blink as names were called, her focus unwavering. Margaret Langley took Ellen's original seat, smoothing her shawl as a photographer snapped her. An usher brought her water. Ellen caught the flash from her new spot and looked away, tired but resolute, her gaze fixed on her son, the reason she was there. At the square's edge, near the chain-link fence, 5 men stood quietly as the crowd gathered. They wore Navy firefighter uniforms, work shirts, cargo pants, polished boots, like any locals there to support the kids. They blended in, but their stance, back straight, shoulders square, eyes scanning exits, gave them away. They hadn't come for Ellen. They came, like everyone else, to cheer the town's students. But as they watched her get shuffled back seat by seat, they found each other. One, tall with graying temples, nodded to the others. They huddled by the fence, speaking low, eyes sharp. "She's not saying a word," one said. "But we've got to," another replied. They nodded, agreed, and decided to move. Jack was an electrician, hands stained with grease, a wrench tucked in his pocket, and a thermos of strong coffee always at his side. His laugh could warm a silent room, and he'd spin Ellen around their tiny kitchen, no music needed. Raised just blocks from her in a small town, Jack, son of a plumber and a grocery clerk, wore his clean uniform and steady paycheck with pride. But in this town, he wasn't the man girls like Ellen were expected to choose. At 22, Ellen was torn between trade school and leaving her parents' home when she met Jack at his auto shop. Her car's wiring had failed, and he fixed it in 15 minutes, waving off her tip with a grin. "In case it acts up again," he said, handing her a card with his number scrawled in ink. The car broke down again, she called, and something sparked, born from engine oil and the hum of live wires. Their first date was ribs and pool at a dive bar, laughter cutting through the smoky air. On their second, at the county library, Ellen watched him kneel to help a kid find a Spanish picture book, his kindness quiet but bright. That kindness unsettled some. When Ellen brought Jack home for Sunday dinner, pot roast steaming, her father's face hardened at Jack's brown skin and firm handshake. Her mother's smile was forced, her words sparse, avoiding his eyes. The silence at dessert was louder than any argument. No one said it outright, but the tension lingered, like the stares they got holding hands on Main Street. Whispers followed. "Sure he's not using you to escape that shop? Guys like him don't stay. Worried about your future?" The last jab stuck deep. 6 months later, they married at the courthouse, no family present. In their rented bungalow, Jack poured cheap wine and grilled ribs, and Ellen laughed through tears. She'd chosen love, but also solitude. They built a life from quiet mornings and hard work. Jack took extra shifts. Ellen cleaned houses by day, studied wiring at night. When Ethan was born, they had $50 and a fridge of frozen bread. But their son's curious eyes, like Jack's, made it enough. Ellen fell in love again, with her boy, her husband, their patched-together life. Good things don't always last. Jack died on a Tuesday, crushed when a scaffold collapsed, a loose bolt left unchecked. Ellen got the call while changing Ethan's sheets. The hospital was too late. The company dodged blame. A lawsuit failed for lack of evidence. No funeral crowd, no flowers, just silence. Neighbors watched through blinds as Ellen carried Ethan, but none knocked. A mail carrier left an unsigned card. Someone slipped 220s under her door. The quiet screamed, "Was she ever seen?" Ellen fought on. She tried moving to a better school district, no openings. A loan for a repair shop, no collateral. Grief groups, full. When Ethan started kindergarten, he was placed in a suitable class and came home asking why kids mocked his looks. Ellen held him close, saying nothing. At night, she studied wiring, took jobs at gas stations and stores, head down, refusing pity or doubt. The town's rejection of Jack, their dismissal of Ethan as an outsider, burned in her. It never faded. In that fire, she forged something hard as steel, a resolve to prove her worth for herself and her son. Because this town took Jack, tried to take her son's place before he could claim it. But Ellen wasn't just here to see Ethan's award. She was here to prove nothing. No whispers, no glares, no shuffled seats could stop what she'd built. She'd earned her spot, and she'd hold it. Ellen built a reputation as a top electrician, her repair shop a haven for those the town overlooked. She charged fair prices, listened quietly, and fixed more than just wires. When a veteran dropped off a busted truck with a flyer for community emergency response training, CERT, Ellen applied, knowing she would be turned down. She wasn't a veteran, had no connections, but her focus was unshakable. 2 weeks later, they called her to join. At the training ground outside town, Ellen arrived in her patched jacket and worn boots, standing out among firefighters, EMTs, and ex-military. Short, female, and reserved, she carried a quiet strength, never complaining. The program, a partnership to prepare civilians for crises like floods or blackouts, demanded practical skills. Ellen delivered. She led a young firefighter crew, 5 men under 30, through drills, her instincts sharp where others faltered. During a mock rescue, she navigated an unmapped alley, spotting hazards before surveillance gear did. "Old city plans don't update fast enough," she said, earning a raised eyebrow from the lead firefighter. Ellen taught what manuals couldn't, guiding the crew with real-world know-how. They named her Beacon, a title, not a nickname, for her ability to light the way in chaos. In a warehouse fire years later, her tactics saved 3 firefighters and 10 civilians, cutting casualty rates by half. The crew wanted to honor her. She waved it off. "Do your jobs," she said, returning to her shop. Her strategies became standard, a testament to her impact. On the last training day, the firefighters gave her a Navy patch. Year-stamped, 1 word. Beacon. Ellen kept it in her truck's glove box, a quiet reminder that 5 men saw her worth beyond her dusty boots. On the morning of Ethan's scholarship ceremony, she paused, took the patch, and sewed it inside her jacket, over her heart, carrying her legacy forward. Ellen cleared the checkpoint with her invite ticket. She arrived early, in her old work jacket, the one that had seen more job sites than the polished loafers on stage. She found her seat in the 5th row, her name neatly printed, Ellen Hayes, parent of a scholarship recipient. She sat straight, hands folded on the program, back firm, despite the 85-degree heat under the tent. Her eyes traced the stage, mapping the path her son would walk, then stopped. The first half-hour passed quietly. Parents trickled in. There were excited murmurs, laughter, staff hustling with clipboards. Then Margaret Langley arrived, with her posse of well-dressed women. She moved like she was on a runway, turquoise shawl fluttering, heels clicking. Her daughter, frowning, trailed behind, annoyed by the heat or the attention. When Langley reached the front row, her eyes caught Ellen amid the pastels and pearls. She paused, adjusted her sunglasses, tilted her head. Then she whispered to the woman beside her, who replied with a huff. Ellen knew. She'd learned to read conversations without hearing words, and this one was clear. What's she doing here? Always that question. Not who she was, not what she'd done, but why she wasn't in her place. Minutes later, an usher appeared. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. We've got some last-minute seating changes. We're asking a few parents to move to the overflow section for capacity reasons." He smiled apologetically, eyes flicking to Langley. "We'll make sure you've got a good view." Ellen looked at him a moment. Her hands didn't move. Her jaw stayed loose. "My name's on this seat," she said simply. "I understand," the usher said, voice firmer. "We're following the organizer's instructions." It was the council president's invisible hand, sorting people by looks, dressed up in logistics. Ellen stood. She didn't argue, didn't raise her voice. She gathered her things, just the program and her pride, and walked. They led her back 1 row, then 2. Another parent arrived with a glossy invite. Ellen was moved again. It went on, quiet and efficient, until she sat in the 10th row, under the tent's edge, sunlight hitting her knees, dust swirling at her feet. From her new seat, she could still see the stage, the podium where Ethan would speak. But the distance between them was wider, not in feet, but in fairness. Behind her, conversations buzzed. Summer plans, college talk. A woman laughed sharply about a real estate deal. No one noticed Ellen. She was a statue. But Ellen didn't shift. She didn't look back. She stared ahead, watching as organizers lined up kids on stage. Her eyes found Ethan instantly. He looked solid, serious, suit pressed, cap tassel pinned neat. He scanned the crowd briefly, and she held her breath, hoping he didn't see her moved. If he saw his mom pushed back, it'd hurt, and she didn't want him carrying that pain today. Meanwhile, the 5 firefighters, in their Navy work uniforms, stood scattered around the square, there as citizens for the ceremony. But as they saw Ellen moved, seat by seat, they found each other. The tall one with graying temples signaled the others. They gathered by the fence, speaking low, eyes sharp. "She's not saying a word," one said. "But we have to," another replied. They nodded, agreed, and decided to step up. The ceremony kicked off, like so many others, polished, predictable, built to showcase the town's values. The choir sang. The president welcomed everyone. A kid cracked a joke about finals. Parents clapped, laughed on cue, dabbed tears when prompted. Ellen sat still, hands folded, eyes locked on the stage where students waited their turn. From this distance, Ethan looked older, taller than she remembered this morning, his jaw set like he was ready for a courtroom. Names were called, one by one, booming through the speakers with applause and camera flashes. Families leaned forward, eager to see their kids cross the stage. Ellen didn't move. She had no camera, no sign, just steady breaths, honed from years of staying calm under pressure. Up front, Margaret Langley had her moment. Her daughter glided across the stage like a pageant queen. There was applause, an air kiss, and endless family photos, like they were bottling pride. Langley glanced back once, smug. Her eyes didn't linger on Ellen. They never did. The crowd buzzed as the ceremony hit its peak. Then came a pause, a hiccup. Not enough to alarm, but enough for heads to turn. From the square's edge, the sound of boots on gravel rang out, steady, rhythmic, purposeful. From the east side, a figure emerged, tall, lean, in a Navy firefighter's uniform. He walked with intent that didn't match the ceremony, eyes forward. Behind him, another, then another, until 5 men marched in step down the main aisle. No rush, no noise, but undeniably there. The crowd parted around them like water. Ellen knew first. Her heart didn't race. It settled, a deep breath rising from years buried deep. The crowd turned, unsure whether to stare or look away. The president whispered to an aide, confused. "You know them?" he asked. She shook her head. No one did. The 5 stopped before the stage. They didn't look at the president. They didn't ask permission. One stepped forward, pulling a small patch from his pocket. He handed it to the usher. A Navy patch, year stamped. One word. Beacon. Then he faced the crowd, voice clear and steady. "We came here as citizens, but we can't stay quiet when we see wrong. That seat," he pointed to the front row where Langley sat, "belongs to Ellen Hayes, but it was taken because she doesn't wear silk or pearls." That's not right. More than that, Ellen Hayes is the teacher of every firefighter in this town. She taught us what no manual could, how to save lives, how to survive. 3 years ago, she helped us save 3 of our own and 10 civilians in a warehouse fire. Her tactics cut our crews and the town's casualty rates by half. She's not just our unsung hero, she's this town's. No one deserves that front row seat more than her. A heavy silence fell. No one moved. The man continued, voice no louder. "We call her Beacon. Today you call her the mother of a scholarship winner. But either way, she's the one who built the foundation for this town's safety." The words didn't echo. They sank, heavy and still. Ethan stood behind the podium, frozen for a moment, then stepped forward, extending a hand. They saluted, all five, sharp and in sync. The crowd stayed quiet. Langley, half-turned in her seat, didn't know whether to stand or disappear. The silence wasn't awkward. It was sacred. Then a student stood, clapping. The sound broke the stillness like a match struck on stone. One clap, then a few, then a wave. The crowd erupted. Applause swept the square like thunder. People stood not because they were told, but because something inside demanded it. The president, face flushed, hurried to the mic. "We invite Ms. Hayes to return to her original seat," he said, voice shaky. Ellen met his eyes, shook her head slightly, and stayed put. "I'm fine right here," she said, soft but clear. The ceremony went on, but the air had shifted. Ellen stayed seated, eyes locked on Ethan, hand brushing her jacket, back straight, not from pride, but from completion. What needed saying had been said, and she didn't have to say it. The applause after the firefighters' tribute should have ended the ceremony. It felt like a full stop. But one name hadn't been called, and when the president, voice softer now, announced, "Scholarship recipient, Ethan Hayes," the crowd leaned in, not out of habit, but out of respect. Ethan crossed the stage slowly, steps deliberate, eyes not on the president, not on the crowd, but on the 10th row, where his mom sat. The certificate in his hand felt lighter than it should, lighter than the weight on his chest that morning. He reached the podium, and the silence returned. He stood still, letting the quiet stretch. He didn't look at his speech. The folded pages stayed under the podium. Instead, he placed his hands on the wood, took a breath, and looked out at the sea of faces. Parents, students, teachers, and the 5 firefighters standing in the back. "I wrote a speech," Ethan began, voice steady but sharp. "It had a joke, some quotes, a story about my teacher's dog, but I'm not giving it today." He paused, eyes sweeping the crowd. "Because today, I'm not here to accept an award. I'm here to talk about the woman who gave me everything. My mom, Ellen Hayes." The crowd went still. Ethan continued, voice stronger, each word striking like a hammer. "This award is supposed to honor talent, dedication, and values. But today, the people giving it failed those values. They pushed my mom out of her seat, not because she didn't belong, but because she didn't fit their picture of important. They didn't see her, the woman who worked nights to raise me, who taught firefighters how to save lives, who saved people without ever stepping into the spotlight. She's not just my mom. She's the teacher of this town, the hero no one talks about, whether you know it or not." He leaned closer to the mic, voice lowering, each word carved into the air. "My mom taught me that real value isn't in a front row seat or a certificate. It's in what you do when no one's watching. Today, I saw the people giving this award fall short of the values they claim, so I can't take it." He held up the certificate, set it on the podium, and looked straight at the president. "Give it to someone who deserves it, like my mom." The silence was deeper than the earlier applause. It pressed on chests, weighed on shoulders. Then a teacher stood clapping. A student followed, then the whole crowd. The applause wasn't just recognition. It was a reckoning. Langley sat frozen, her smile shattered. The president stood silent, hands trembling, speechless. Ethan stepped back, not returning to the students. He crossed the stage, walked straight to his mom, leaned down, kissed her cheek, and whispered, "We don't need the front row." Ellen didn't cry, not then, but her hand trembled slightly as she straightened his collar. They sat together through the ceremony's end, through scholarship announcements and final remarks, through the cameras as caps flew skyward. They sat like a mountain in shadow, silent, unyielding, bound by something deeper than pride. As the ceremony ended, the crowd dispersed, camera flashes fading. The firefighters approached, shaking Ethan's hand but saluting Ellen. One spoke, voice low but firm. "Ma'am, you taught us to save lives, but today, you taught us to stand up." Ellen met their eyes, steady. "I didn't do anything you couldn't," she said. "I just didn't let anyone tell me I can't." Ryan, a firefighter from her training days, handed her a patch, gold lettering, Honorary Command. She traced its edge, nodded, and accepted the gesture, not for applause, but for truth finally seen. A few lingered, awed, as if they'd witnessed something sacred. A veteran, eyes misty, approached. "Ma'am, you make this country proud," he said, then walked away. Ellen left, not a guest but the ceremony's heart, carrying quiet gravity. The sun set as she and Ethan reached the crowd's edge, the square's buzz fading. Ethan asked, "Think they'll remember today?" Ellen opened the truck door, glanced back and said, "They'll try to forget, but it's too late." It happened. They skipped fancy dinners, grabbing burgers from a diner, and eating at home under dim light. Ethan's certificate sat on the dashboard, unimportant. Ellen's silence spoke volumes. Days later, a photo hit the local paper. Ethan at the podium, Ellen in the back, firefighters nearby. Titled, "The Woman in the Work Jacket," it spread through emails and flyers. A teacher laminated Ethan's speech, placing it under the town founder's portrait. It stayed. Thompson retired early. Langley left the PTA. Their absence sparked the Hayes Award for Quiet Dedication, passed unanimously. Ellen didn't attend those meetings. She didn't need to. Back at her shop, she fixed trucks and helped neighbors. A local kid brought his battered bike weekly. She taught him to patch cables. "You're teaching me to survive," he said. Ellen handed him a wrench, smiling. "No, I'm teaching you not to ask permission." The Honorary Command patch stayed in her drawer, not because it lacked value, but because its truth didn't need display. Her legacy was woven into the town's memory, undeniable. At summer's end, Ellen and Ethan stood outside her shop, the sun sinking. The world resumed its rhythm, but they stood apart, shifted by truth's brief spotlight. Ethan asked, "Think people really change?" Ellen wiped grease from her hands, gazed at the quiet street, and said, "Some don't. But the ones who matter, they do."